About 3 after. I don't know, Dave, if you want to get started or you want to wait another minute.
I think we could get started.
Okay.
You want me to kick it off?
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Brian Ross with Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I am the partner business manager responsible for the HPE storage relationship with Ingram Micro here in the US. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for joining us again today. I know some of you were with us on Monday, but I appreciate all of the Ingram Micro partners and associates taking time to connect with us about the Alletra 5 and 6000 solutions. As I mentioned on Monday, the 5 and 6000 are foundational pieces of our storage and data services solution set, and the tools that Dave and Chris are going to review today help shape our solutions and deliver the best possible outcomes for our customers. So today we're lucky to have two fantastic resources from the Ingram Micro team, Dave Wagner and Chris Conti, to present for us. So I'll let them take it away.
All right, thanks for that, Brian. So I'm Dave Wagner, one of the senior technical account managers here on the HPE team at Ingram Micro. Chris is one of my counterparts in our contact center. And today we're going to discuss sizing and configuration and OCA of the Alletra 5000 and 6000. So I'm going to switch over my screen and jump right into the first part of this, which is the sizing tool. Okay. So the sizing tool for a lot of the HP storage products is called Ninja Stars, and I'll show you later where you can get a copy of it. It's super easy to install. It's a lightweight application. I mean, technically you don't even have to install it. You download it into the directory and you just double click the file to run it. The other thing it has built into it, since there are new versions, is when you launch it, if there's a new version, it'll check and make a notification that it needs, that there's a new version available, and it'll start you through the upgrade process if you want to go and do that. Of course, you can always go and download a new version if you prefer, and there's also a way to force check updating a new version. So I'm just going to sort of work through this. You can see there's a bunch of different products down here in this bottom menu that you can configure. We're going to just go right into Alletra. When you pick that, you get a menu of all the different Alletra options. You've got the 5000, which is the hybrid model. You've got your 6000, which is the all flash. And then up at the top, these are not we're going to be covered today. These are the 9000 series, which is based on 3-par slash 3-par leg technology. But we're going to just start with the more challenging product of the two Alletras that we're going to talk about, which is the 5000 series. So I'm just going to pick a model. And then let me just sort of go through how the UI is set up. So first, starting at the center, you see all kinds of useful information about the configuration that you have, what product that you have configured, the capacity of the spinning disk, the capacity of the cache drives that you've put in. To the right of that, you have your network ports that are configured. And by default, it's going to start out with a base configuration, and all of this can be adjusted. Scrolling down a little bit, we have our capacity section, which covers the usable, raw, and effective capacities after data reduction. They show the maximum effective here, but the number you really want to focus on is this 90% number, because you don't want to fill the arrays up. So this is one of the sort of the checkpoints that you're going to use when you're doing configuration for this. A little bit to the right, you have your data reduction rate. The default is 3:1. That's adjustable, and I'll get into how you make adjustments to that. And then to the right of that, we have our cache amount and what they call FDR, or flash to disk ratio. And that's an important consideration. I'll talk more about that later. Underneath that, we have our performance numbers. This is all set up by default with the assumption that there's a 95% flash hit ratio. You can actually change that. I would not recommend it. You can change it up to 100%. That's just not realistic. So leave it at the 95. You can make adjustments. If you right click on these dials, these little donuts, you can change what block size if you want to. Default is 8K. But if you did want to see different options, you could change that to get IO information based on what you feel the workloads actually are in a customer's environment. Okay. Over to the right of that, there's environmentals. It covers everything that you configure in here. It gives you your rack unit size, depth, weight, cooling, etc. And this adjusts based on how you do your configuration. So I'm going to work from left to right on the menu just to show you some of the things that you can do. So first off, when you're going through the configuration process, if you run into a situation where the performance isn't going to meet the needs of the customer, or you can't get to the capacity point due to limitations of the particular model, you can change the controller on the fly. So if I wanted to adjust this to a lower end model like the 5010, I could just click that and it would change the controller. Next to have power cords. This is seemingly probably a weird option they have in here. I'll sort of explain why. There is in the center, you see a menu option for bill of materials, and this will actually show you roughly the parts that are actually going to be on the configuration. So if you wanted to actually utilize that bill of materials, it's part of an export that you can get, and you want to be more accurate about the power cords that are going to be on that. This is where you can make adjustments to that, and it gives you options throughout the world. I'm just going to leave it at standard worldwide power. To the right of that, we have a menu option to select the spinning disk portion of the capacity they're adding. If there's additional options, you can just click that arrow and it'll show them. In this case, there's not. I'm just going to leave it at the 126 terabytes for now. Going for the right of that, we have our cache size. So that's going to make the direct adjustments to this section right here. So you just click this. And let's go with, let's say, this size. So this pops it up to 17%. Generally speaking, what you want to do is be in this green area, and that starts right at about 12%. That's the minimum recommended. I like being a little bit over that, I like giving a little wiggle room. So it's one of the things that when you're working through the configuration, I'll just give you an example. If we change the size here to 210 terabytes of spinning disk, this goes down to 10. Well, I'm not going to be comfortable with that. So I'm going to want to bump up to the next and see if that's a good fit. And there we go. We're at 14%. Good place to be. Another thing in this cache section, one of the capabilities that you do have on the 5000 series is if you have a particular volume that you feel is mission critical to always get flash-like performance, you don't want it ever going to the spinning disk for data, you can pin the volume. And I'll just put in here an example of 2 terabytes. And what you can see is this actually adjusted your flash to disk ratio. This is taking account that you're actually tying up some of the cache to use for a dedicated volume. So I'm just going to put this back to 0. And you can see how this number changes. So if you know the customer is going to do something like volume pinning, this is where you can size for that and take it into account. To the right of that, we have the ability to add expansion shells. Go ahead and do that right now. Just like the main chassis, you can make adjustments to the drive packs in it. You can adjust the cache in it. And as you make those types of changes, again, this is one of the places you want to check is just make sure this flash to disk ratio is good. Let me go ahead and remove this. And change this controller. There we go. So another thing I wanted to show you, when you're doing the configuration, occasionally what will happen in this performance area is it'll throw up error messages, giving some advice on how to properly do the configuration. For example, in this case, it's giving 2 warnings. One, that in order to achieve maximum performance with the 5050, they recommended an additional enclosure. So I'm going to go ahead and add that enclosure in. So now we see we have the base and expansion enclosure. And then it says for optimal performance, how many ports you have need of a particular network interface. Now, in this case, it's calling out fiber channel because I have fiber channel selected over here. I could change this to, let's say, 10 gig. iSCSI, would tell me, oh, I need 8 of those. So it's taking into account the bandwidth of those ports, giving you guidance on what to actually do. Now you do have the capability to pick any type of network options from this menu and specify how many ports that you need or want. And it is possible to mix. If you want to add fiber channel, for example, as well as 10 gig iSCSI, you can do that. And I'll go ahead and tweak this until I get this error message go away. And now you see it's giving me performance numbers because it's comfortable with, as I have this configured, it's got enough bandwidth to actually deliver the maximum capable performance of the unit. Okay, let's go over a few other options. You go to the view menu, you can change what type of units you see for capacity. Right now, this is set up at terabytes. I actually like to work with tebibytes, which is the base 2 numbers. And the reason for that is this more accurately shows the capacity you'll see at an operating system level. So that's a good option to set. Also, if for some reason you wanted to see metric numbers instead of imperial units, you can do that here as well. Mine is set up for imperial. Next, I want to sort of touch on data reduction. So like I said, by default, this is set up with 3-to-1 data reduction as expected results. However, this is really very data dependent. So not everything compresses or dedupes the same rate. So they have 2 options to really sort of help you drill down into what you might really see. For example, you can just directly adjust the ratio up or down to a place that you feel comfortable with. Or even better, if you are able to interview the customer in more detail to see what applications they have, you can go into this applications section, pick applications that the customer has, and how much capacity they have in them. You can add multiple as needed. So I'm just going to add a few here just to show you how this ends up working. And another thing they take into account is not only applications, but what if you have a situation, let's say storage is going to be used for medical records or some kind of multimedia files, video surveillance or something like that, where generally speaking, you're not going to get any compression or deduplication because the data has already been reduced. You can actually put an entry in here for non-reducible data. If you can get this all filled out with the information from your customer's environment, this can give you a very accurate feel for what you should expect from data reduction. And why we can say this number is accurate is because one of the benefits of the Alletra platform is InfoSight, which feeds data back to HPE. They collect all those analytics and they're able to get a good handle on what customers are seeing in the real world. So these are conservative numbers, but you can expect that these are going to be accurate. Also can check this box for thin provisioning. The assumption is most people would be taking advantage of that. I'm typically checking that box. It's not checked by default. Anyway, after I've gone through this exercise, put all this data in on the applications the customer has, I now have what they feel should expect from a data reduction ratio. And once I hit the OK, it actually plops that in and overrides this manual ratio that I had done earlier. So it's a good way to do things. If you can collect that type of data, there's some other options I'm going to talk about a little bit later from some tools that HP has on one of their portals called the SAF or the Storage Assessment Foundry, where you can actually use some tools to gather data from a customer's environment to see what they really can expect. Another good way to do this is if the customer is on a prior generation, like Nimble Gen 5, you can go into info, have them go into InfoSight, look at their InfoSight data currently on the array that they have. And if they're going to be migrating to the new array, you can use that as a guideline on your data reduction rate. I often like just to do like a 2.5 to 1 conservative if I can't get that data, if someone's just trying to get a budgetary quote or something like that. But it's definitely a good thing to dig in on if the customer doesn't know. All right, so another thing I want to show quickly is there's this bill of materials button where you can see what the parts are roughly that would end up on the quote. If this is something that you find helpful, a few things you can do. One, I mentioned earlier, you can adjust the power cord so that shows up correctly. But the other thing too is you can adjust the service level, and you do that by clicking over here. This menu only shows up when you're on bill of materials, and pick whatever service level that you're going to actually quote them, and as well as the duration. So let's just change that to 5-year and 4-hour exchange, and you can see that these changed in the bill of materials if that's important to you. Okay, let's see, what else did we want to talk about? Okay, so another nice thing about this tool is you can export this config after you have it set up to meet your customer's requirements. You can export this to PDF or Word, and I'll just show you how to do that. Now, it's a little quirky in that the export only works if you're on Nimble Storage or Primera 3 Par. So I'm going to just move this over to Nimble. Go to the File button, and then click on Export. And then I can go ahead and do PDF. Give it a name. I'm just going to overwrite this other one. And then the last, if I would like to see it, and so I'm going to open that up so you can see this. Did that disappear? Can you see the PowerPoint? Or excuse me, can you see the PDF? I assume not.
It's gone, Dave.
Yeah, let me share it. So I'm not actually sharing my screen. Okay, so now do we see the PDF?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So as you can see, this gives a nice summary of the configuration. You can see the ports that have been added for host connectivity. You can see the capacity, what kind of support they have, a quick little summary. Just get an idea of the actual configuration, the environmentals, capacity, including this all important one here, which is your 90% effective capacity. That's what you want to shoot for, for the long-term customers' expectations that you're here or under, so that you're not oversizing or undersizing. Your cache flash to disk ratio, and then all the data reduction information. If you did put that detailed information in, it'll give you those results so that you can review them with the customer. They can confirm that these numbers actually fit up to what they're actually looking for. And then information on performance. And so this is all packaged up in a nice little PDF that you can send to your client. And like I said, there is a Word document option as well. And lastly, they have the BOM. And this is part of the reason I like to adjust those settings in Ninja Stars so this BOM is more accurate. So I'm not showing a different duration of support or things like that. Go back to Ninja Stars. Right. Oh, also, since we're here, there is another button here called software updates. So you can manually kick off an update if you want. You can save these configs. So there's a little save as. It saves in this .ns format. So if you have a few different builds that you're working on, different customers, you just want to save this for your own records, you can save a copy and refer to that later on.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
There's a couple of questions in the chat. Did you want to get to them now?
I can look at them. Let's see, from William. Selecting the ports, number being shown is the total number of ports or the ports per controller. It's the total number of ports per controller. So yes, it would be doubled. These controllers are active, passive. So just sort of keep that in mind. And is there a way to capture Exchange file server info from Cloud Physics or Live Optics? Definitely Cloud Physics. I'm not sure how good Live Optics is it. I know a lot of people like it. I'm going to actually show you a tool that HPE has that allows you to do some data collection. Of course, Cloud Physics is an HPE tool as well, but I'm going to show one specifically more to Nibble specifically, because there's some tools that do some different things, like actually allow you to predict data reduction. So quickly, because I definitely want to give time to Chris, I'm just going to jump really quickly back to this page and show you how the 6030 or 6000 series works. So not much terribly different other than we don't have any spinning disks, so we have to worry about a flash to disk ratio. The menu looks very similar. In addition to that, the drive packs are only NVMe drives. Now, just to sort of explain how this visual, you can sort of see that if you hover over them, you see that these are 12 drive packs when it looks like just one icon, and when it's like a layered icon, these are 24. The thing to keep in mind, at least right now, if you plan in the future to do expansion shelves, you have to have 24 drives of the same type in the main shelf. And in fact, it won't actually even let you do an expansion shelf. If you try, it'll warn you that that's not allowed. Those are the options. You can pick any of these drive packs depending on your capacity needs. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that, so get rid of the error message. The other thing that's a little bit different is there's a power supply option. There is an 800 watt and 1600 watt power supply. It does depend on the model if these will both be available. Some models don't have the 800 available. Some don't have the 1600 watt available. The significant thing about this is that the 800 watts will allow you to go to low line power, like to like a NEMA power supply, power connection, that you sometimes can run into. Customers don't have data center set up for high voltage. So you can make that adjustment here, and that adjusts how it works out on the bill of materials. That being said, the configuration works the same thing for data reduction. You can make the same adjustments. You can export these configs. Again, the ability to mix iSCSI and fiber channel. You can change the number of ports that you have this configured for, depending on your needs, and it'll throw those warnings down for you. And again, you can make the adjustments to what kind of block size you want. So really nothing different. These are a little bit easier to configure because you don't have to be focused on that flash to disk ratio, which is just a little extra concern that you have to keep in mind, because you don't want to have a customer situation where they can't take advantage of features or have problems. With that, I'm going to transition to something else that I sort of alluded to, which is some HP sizing tools. So let's go ahead and switch over. Just need to get the right screen. Here we go. All right. So this is HP's Assessment Foundry. The website address you see up here, saf.hpe.com, is how you get to it. It's anyone that's has a partner portal account, get in. When you log in, this is the screen it's going to take you to. This has a list of all the different assessments that I've done. It's filtered by default to the last 90 days, but you can extend this out to show all of the ones I've ever done. So the thing I wanted to touch on for this portion is that this is where you get Ninja Stars. So you can just click this to download it. In addition, there's a number of other tools, and there's just a few I want to talk about. So you go to this list, there's SAF Analyze. So this is a tool that takes an assessment and processes it and allows you to visually see it. And I'll go back to that and show that. That's on the web. There's the collector tool. So this is the tool that's used to collect workload information, whether that's Windows, Linux, servers, VMware, Hyper-V, but also storage arrays. So if you wanted to collect information about either an HPE array a customer has or third-party arrays, this can help you do that. And then once you've collected that data, you can process it through the analyzer to see what's going on in that customer's environment. Here's also another link for Ninja Stars. And then there's one others I wanted to show you. There's quite a few tools here. The Nimble Space Savings Estimator. So if you wanted to use a tool that could go and crawl through a customer's environment, let it look a few different volumes and see, what kind of space savings I can get, and to help come up with that dedupe ratio. This is a tool that you can use to do that. And once you've done that data collection, you can import it into here, and then you can actually go have it be analyzed and then look at the assessment and see what's going on in the environment. And this will collect information about hosts, storage systems, storage utilization, all kinds of useful information to help with your sizing. So this isn't an alternative to cloud physics for a lot of different things, but it's also has some better tools for storage specifically. Another thing you can do if you're familiar with, what is it called? RVT. There's a VMware tool. You can do list of data collection into VMware, and you can actually import these as RV tools. So RV tools can be imported directly into this as well. So that's another helpful way to collect data from VMware using something that a lot of customers like, which is RV tools to collect that data. So that's what I want to touch on SAF. Going to hand it over to Chris now to jump into OCA.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. So my portion is a little bit shorter and definitely a lot more succinct and kind of easier to deal with than the sizing portion. Once again, my name is Chris Conti. I am a senior solutions specialist here at Ingram Micro, focusing on HPE storage. What I'm going to show you today is how to configure what Dave showed you how to size. Can everybody see my OCA screen? Somebody confirm that for me.
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to assume you guys know the basic functionality of OCA as a whole, and we're going to focus really on configuring Alletra. If you have any questions, please do throw them in the Q&A section, and either Ann or Dave will grab it. So this is your home screen. We know we can get here through the partner portal, through the tools section under configuration. And there's a couple of different ways to start your configuration. This is kind of why that bomb screen in Ninja Stars that Dave showed you is so great, because it gives you basically a list that you can match up with your config at the end to make sure that you got exactly what you configured or what you sized in Ninja Stars. The Alletra configurations in OCA are what they call wizards. Love them or hate them. I actually think for someone who is not as familiar with the configuration system or who is newer to OCA, the wizards are a lot nicer, just because they allow you to configure these things with as few questions as possible. It's very hard to screw up a config when using the wizard. On the other hand, it does kind of limit your configuration options to what they have programmed into the wizard. With Alletra, it doesn't really kind of come up too much that it ends up being an issue. I'll show you how to get back into the wizard once you've exited it. to make any changes, just so that you're aware. But there are two ways to get to start your Alletra config. Once you've started a new configuration, I think the easiest way to get to it is just to come here under select product and type Alletra. And depending on how you have your settings here, it might show you a big giant list and you'll see green lace and stuff. But what you really want to focus on is going to be the ones that are in purple that say wizard right here. So you can see there's the Alletra 5000 here, there's the Alletra 6000 here, and of course you could narrow it down if you were searching and just space 5000 or space 6000. And you're going to want to either select the 5000 or the 6000, or if you're looking to configure DHCI with Alletra, it's got your wizards here for both your 6 and 5K with Greenfield or with Brownfield, and we'll look at those as well. The other way to get to them would be through the product catalog, which is down here. You can go select from product catalog, and it takes you to this, and you can narrow it down. There is going to be right here under compute systems and solutions is going to have your DHCI. So you can go nimble DHCI here, or under storage, you can break down your storage to file and object storage. Where's block storage? Primary storage, here we go. And then it breaks it down into your MSA storage systems, and then you have your Alletra, and you can go choose your Alletra system to config, and you can go from there. But like I said, I think the easiest and quickest way to get to it is through the wizard. So let's start with that 5K. All right, so we'll type in Alletra. We'll just go space 5 and it'll narrow it down for us. And I'm going to choose the HPE Alletra 5000. Now, whether you know you're starting with a 5010 or a 5030 or 5050, you're always starting with the 5K wizard. Same with the 6000. All right. We're not going to mess with any of the rest of this stuff here because we're going to assume you have it all preset. And we'll just click create. All right. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring you to the solution wizard for the system that you've chosen. All right. And right away, you can't make any changes. The first thing you have to do is confirm that you've talk to your customer and let them know that it has to be 100% cloud connected. Right? We know that Alletra cannot be set up. It cannot be used without connection and call back to HPE. So before you can even configure this for your customer, you have to check this box in that you've confirmed cloud connectivity, and it'll be available for registration and activation of the array. Otherwise, they're buying a very expensive paperweight. Okay, so once you've checked the box, it then unlocks all the rest of the configuration options for you. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to select your base array. And right here is where it gives you the option for the 5010, the 30, or the 50, right? So we'll just say it's a 10. And then it resets and we're good to go. Now here on your array selection screen, it also gives you the option to add your optional switches. And you can choose B series, C series, or the M series switch, which then will give you the option of available switches in the drop-down menu. All right, but we're not going to focus on that right now. So we're just going to leave those as none. It's nice that it doesn't automatically throw them in, so you don't have to remove them every time like it did with 3PAR. But it does give you the option to throw them in there. All right, so the next thing you're going to do in the wizard is you're going to move over to base array components. And it's going to walk you through nice and easy. Anything with a red diamond, you have to address before you can make this available, a valid config. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do with a 5000 series, since it's the hybrid, is you're going to choose your hard drive capacity that you're looking for. So just as an example, we'll choose that 42 terabyte bundle. All right. The next thing you have to do is select your cache bundle. It's telling you the minimum is the 2.88 required for that particular hard drive bundle, because 1.44 terabyte would not be enough in terms of your flash disk ratio. So we'll make it happy there. Okay. So then we have to go to bank B and put our flash in there. Now what you could do is for the minimum of 2.88, you could have bank A and bank B have your 1.44s, and then you have met the minimum requirements of that 42 terabytes. Moving on, your connectivity. So all Alletra, just like your Nimbles, are going to have 2 onboard base T ports per controller. Best practice though on those is we want to make sure that we're using those as our management ports. Okay. So if you don't add any additional network connectivity, it's still a valid config because there's still connectivity per controller, right? So that's why it's not giving you a red diamond. But let's go ahead and add at least one network card. Now, when you make this selection here, this is on a per controller basis. So you don't need to select network card 1 for controller 1 and network card 2 for controller 2, right? You're just going to go ahead and choose one of these kits, and you can see as the description, it's 2 of the 1 gig 2-port controllers, or NIC cards rather. This one's 2 of the 2-port 10 gig. Okay, so that's something to make sure that you're paying attention to. One of these SKUs is 2 physical cards, 1 for each controller. All right. So once we've made that selection, we'll move over to the software, which you really don't have to change. There's no option. It's just going to give you your tier 1 storage default software. This is your base OS. Zerto is always going to be automatically selected by default. And you would think to remove it, just changing this quantity to 0 would do it, but it actually doesn't. You have to change the drop down to none. Okay, and then even though this says 5, you selected none, so it's going to leave the Zerto out. If you leave the Zerto selected and change the quantity to 0, it'll change it back and you'll still have Zerto on your config. All right, and the final thing that you have to change in order to make this a valid config is going to be your power cords. It doesn't by default include any power cables. And again, what you have to remember here is it actually is really nice, and it tells you that quantity 1 of any SKU you select is 1 pair of power cords. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to choose the power cords that we need. You can do the NEMA 515 to C13s. You can do your jumper cables. All your different power cable options are in here. But we'll just go the 515 to the C13. Okay. Now we have a valid config. You can see here that the check mark gives us configuration status okay. If you wanted to look through here, you could do add-on storage. This is where you would be able to add your expansion shelves. All right, and each one is going to allow you to add your cache and your power cords. Okay, and then your miscellaneous hardware tab is going to be your shelf spares. So this is where you could choose, spare power supplies, spare controllers, things that aren't going to be selected and factory integrated into the array, but rather show up in a separate box so that you can throw on a shelf. Okay, so now we're done. But if you know OCA, we still have to look at a few things to make sure this is okay. And you can see up here under the, I like to call this the file system of the config. It starts with your root of your config on the left, and then it drills down further and further into the config, or into the solution rather. We're going to take this back to OCA config 6, which right now is the default name, and it's going to take us to the root. Now you can see we're no longer in the wizard. We're just looking at the components. And if we go into any of these, all it's going to do is show us a summary, right? So you're saying to yourself, well, I've screwed it up. I want to change it. How do I fix it? It's very easy. All you have to do is select one of these parts of it. And you could be here. And you could make the changes here. So it looks just like your normal menu in OCA, where you could make any of the changes that you need. And then from here, you could click this right here to return the solution wizard. This will take you back here so you have a more condensed view and just make the changes that you need. Or if we're here and we choose this and we're like, where's all the options? All you have to do is you can see here, once you've gone into the Alletra summary, on the left-hand side, that solution wizard shows up again. So you can go ahead and you can click solution wizard and it'll take you back. Right? Super easy. So let's go back to the root of the config. What you're going to want to do now is you're going to want to configure your services. Very important though, you're going to want to make sure before you go into the services tab, you've returned to the root of the config. So you're seeing this menu. If you have multiple arrays, or you have an Alletra array and you have a server on your config and you're drilled down into any component of the config, if you go to services, you're going to be viewing the services for just that portion of the config. So you're going to want to make sure you've return to the root of the config by clicking the name of the config up here so you don't see any carets pointing to anything else. Then you'll come over here on your left-hand side and click services. And you'll see, obviously, there's no fixed services available for this. It's not supported in Alletra, so you're going to default over to flexible. And this is going to show you what you have selected by default. And really, this is going to depend on how you have your profile settings set, whether you have it default to recommended or a specific service. I have mine defaulted to recommended. So what it does right away is it gives you the 5-year Tech Care Essential. And if you click on other services summary, this is where the installation and startup service is for Alletra. Again, a startup service is not required, but it is highly recommended. So what you're going to want to do if you want to change this is make sure you're on support and installation summary, and then click the pencil. If you see multiple pencils, you can click on any one of them. And that'll take you to this menu. And you can see here that it's defaulted as standard. What I do is come over here to select your own, click that, and then it gives you all the options. Now for Alletra, you're not going to worry about the installation here at this level. It's the same as Nimble now. You're going to leave this as no installation. You can filter this down by choosing the duration, whether you want data protection as DMR, CDMR, or none. And then if you're doing complete care, you can use the add-on services here. But let's just say we want to change this over to 3-year. So we've selected 3-year essential service. And now on the right-hand side, there's this box here. Now, since we only have one array in here, this box isn't all that important. But back to what I was referring to before, if you were drilled down into, like, say you had an Alletra and a server and you wanted different support terms on both, this box becomes very important. Right? It says apply the displayed install and support level to all nodes inside the solution where available. If we leave this box checked and we click OK, the entire solution will be switched over to 3-year Tech Care Essential. If you wanted different support terms on different things on the solution, you would uncheck that box and you would go into each one of the components separately and make sure that box is unchecked and set it to whatever support level you needed. It would then, you know, if you could quote the Alletra with 5-year essential, you could quote the server with 3-year Tech Care Basic, you know, so on and so forth. If you want to remove the recommended installation service, you would have to switch over here to other services summary and just click this trash can and it would remove it. Okay. So once we've done that, we're done. We can come over here to the left-hand side. We can click BOM. And again, you're going to want to make sure you're at the root of the configuration and you're not drilled down. So it's showing you the entire BOM. And from here, depending on how you have your columns set up in your profile settings, I have mine set up to show me, obviously, your typical quantity and product number, but I also have the product line codes, the estimated ship times, product lifespan dates, MSRP, so on and so forth. But there are various options you can mess with. Most important thing you want to do here on this screen, though, besides looking and making sure that this matches your BOM that you created in Ninja Stars, is coming over here to the right-hand side and clicking the button that says click check. If you don't know, this is going to run it against a library of configuration rules to make sure that you haven't either omitted something or put a something that's not compatible in there or a wrong support level. Anything that's going to stop it from being configured at the factory would fire a red error that would say unbuildable. You'd have a count of unbuildables here, and your overall status would say unbuildable. Okay. Right now, you know, obviously we've gone through it. We've followed the wizard. We've made sure it's got support and install on it. So we're not even seeing any advice text. Sometimes you'll see advice that, like, if we were to remove the installation on here, you would see either something that said error or advice. As long as it doesn't say unbuildable in red, you're good. But it would say something like, you know, minimum installation service is highly recommended. You don't have to worry about that. As long as it doesn't say unbuildable, you're good to go. All right. So once you've done that, you can come up here on the right-hand side, you can save your config. Saving to local will download the physical.oca file to your computer, which you could then attach to an email and send to us to config for you, to price and quote for you. But if you're going to just send a UCID by saving OCA config, you just click that top one. You can then give it a name. All right. What you're going to do here for anything you send to us is you want to make sure you click the box that says delegate config after save. Okay. Then click save. It'll bring up your new delegation. And then you have your delegator target ID. This is where you're going to put our the Ingram micro work group, which we can send out to you guys. And once you put it in there, you're going to click delegate. And what that'll do, once you send us the UCID, it'll allow us to open up the UCID in OCA as though we configured it, so that we can validate it for you and make any quantity changes or any changes that you need in the future down the line, without having to come back to you guys and say, hey, I know you want this change made, and we can do that for you, but you need to delegate the config to us. We all know the HPE's config tools are sometimes a little bit finicky. It makes it easier on us. It makes it easier on you guys if you just delegate it when you save it. That way we can make any changes without having to bounce back and forth 30 emails, right? And that's the long and the short of configuring a base array. I can show you a 6K, but it would be exactly the same thing. We can look really quick. How much time do we have left? Do we know? Is this an hour or is it 90 minutes?
About 10 minutes, Chris.
About 10 minutes. Okay. Let's look really quick at the DHCI version. You can see how that differs. We won't go through a full config, but I'll just kind of go over some of the differences, and then I will hand it off to Brian. So same thing. Start off with Alletra. For all intents and purposes, we will choose the 5K base config with Greenfield. And it brings you in. And again, the very first thing you have to do is confirm cloud connectivity, and then follow the steps. Okay. Choose your base model, 5010. You can choose your VMware version here. We'll leave it as ESXi 7. Your installation service is very important. If you're going to remove the installation services from the DHCI, you have to select no installation services and then remove it. Because if you don't choose no installation services and remove it, the system is expecting an installation service, and you'll get an unbuildable error. Okay. Over here, you're going to choose the desired base model of your server, whether it's a Gen 10, Gen 10 Plus for 360s or 380s, or if you're going to, whichever servers you're going to use. So let's just, for example, choose the Gen 10 Plus, the 360. You select your base server model. It's telling you minimum 2 required, so you're going to change the quantity to 2 or above, however many you need in your system. You're going to select. Now from here, you don't have to select your Ethernet adapters here. You can do it later on in the config. This just sets it up easier for you. So if we select the Intel here, and we move down to switches, since this is Greenfield, we need to make sure we have our 2 switches in here. So we'll go with our Aruba base models. And we will pick this one just for giggles. Now down here, your default cabling requirements. If you're going to provide your own cabling, that's fantastic. All you have to do is come down here and click I will obtain or use my own network cabling. This will make it so that you don't have to configure transceivers and cables on your switches and in your storage and server system. You can select none, and it'll give you an error. You have to select either you have reviewed it and you're going to add the selected cables and transceivers in the config, or you're going to use your own. If you leave that blank, it's still going to give you an error. Okay. Move over to base array components. Just like we did before, you're going to first we're looking at the base array. So this is your Alletra. You're going to make your selection on your hard drives and your cache. You're going to make your network connectivity selection. You're going to choose whether or not you want to leave the Zerto. Just for ease of use right now, we're going to set it to none. And then we're going to put our power cables in. Okay. And we're good to go. Now we're going to go over to components because now we've configured the Alletra. So let's go over to components in the root of the config. And now you can see we've broken it down. This is going to show us this is the base and it's red because we still have yet to configure the servers and check the switches to make sure they have everything we need. So what we need to do is go into here and we need to make sure these servers are configured with processors. And we're right back to the normal. This is if you had put in a 360 into OCA to configure from base. So we can choose our processors. Let's just make this a green dot so you can see that once you've configured the servers, you're good to go. Put some memory in there. Storage. From here, we just need the high performance fan kit, and that should remove all of the errors. So remove the standard fan kit. And we will add the high performance fan kit and a pair of power supplies. Now, just like magic, config is good to go. Let's see, what is this yelling at? Select server. Oh, we need the PCIe network card. But this is the long and short of it. This is how you configure the DHCI through the wizard. And again, you can get back to the wizard from any point in here just by clicking in. It's going to make a fool out of me. Here we go. Click into the DHCI, click Solution Wizard, and it'll take us back here. Now, we fixed it, right? So now we can go into our services, make sure it's what we want. In this case, we want the Tech Care Essential service. We've selected no installation. It says no installation. We're going to go to BOM. We're at the root of the config. We're going to click check it. We have an unbuildable because we need, did we not choose the installation option here? Guess that's a good example of an unbuildable. No installation services. So it's not expecting installation services. Let's make sure. We're at the root of the config. No installation. It's interesting. Well, you get the idea. Dave, any idea why that's doing that?
Can you jump back into the wizard again?
No installation services. It should be clear, right? There is no reason it should have.
Yeah.
There was an issue in our chat yesterday, so it might be an OCA issue this week.
Yes.
Just that FYI, that happens. There's a Yammer group if anybody online would like to partake in the reporting of issues with Ingram.
So this is something we would report to that Yammer group as an error. But that's all we have. And if there are no questions, which I don't see any, I will pass it along to Brian.
Thanks, Chris and Dave. I appreciate all the content. It was fantastic. And I think that wraps it up for the day, unless anyone has any questions they want to throw into the chat.
We appreciate everybody attending. I know a lot of the attendees attended both Monday and Wednesday, so thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely appreciate it, everyone.